Okay, I've actually got 4 topics to talk to you about, all related to the trip, but the first one is about the Perth Radio Group, and I thought it was interesting because, you know, we often discuss what our club could be doing, and I'm not suggesting we want to do what they're doing, but it is interesting what a club similar to us is able to do. Now,
the mouse, Rex, just over there. No, other way.
Oh, there.
Wireless mouse. So if you just click the button, I think it'll take you to the next one.
Wrong button.
Just go to do the wheel. The wheel. Just click it one. Go back. There we go.
Yes. Okay. They call this the Northern Corridor Radio Group. It's about 20 kilometres north of Perth. It's got about 70 members, which is probably similar to us. They've been set up in what is called Whiteman Park. Whiteman apparently left to the community a large park, and it's used for things like equestrian and stuff, but it means they're away from houses and QRM and all that sort of stuff. So it's so some of the antennas they've got. Oops. This is a full-size 40-metre beam. Some 23-centimetre Yogis. This is a stepper antenna that goes from 6 metres to 40 metres, and that's available for remote operation, so all the members of their club can use the internet and operate that system from home. So if you've got problems with QRM, you've got a fairly hefty I don't know what happens when 2 people want to use it and they've got to operate the stepper IR on 2 bands, but
I guess they have a lockout of some sort.
6, 2 and 70 centimetres, just 160 metre vertical.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work, and that's because if anyone knows Perth, it's all sandy.
Sandy soil.
And they put
ground plane.
and they don't do any good.
And they're obviously not near any water.
Well, I think the water just goes straight through through the sand.
It's very sandy.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
They've got a 2.2 metre dish and a nice rainy dome for a future 10 gig EME station, which
Obviously made a reasonable start.
That's impressive.
yeah, and this actually comes off a ship, and it's fully gyro stabilised and everything else.
Just show off something.
Imagine how much that would have cost you.
Oh yes. And they've actually got 2 of those. I don't know why they were wanting 2, but it's made for close to 10 gigs. I'm not sure exactly what frequency, so they won't have problems tuning it. This is operating position number 1.
Right.
Operating position number 2 for multi-operator contests.
Is that in a separate room or the same room?
Just another view from it in the same room. Yeah. This is all the PAs. What? I'm sure they're only 400 watts.
I'm sure.
But what is really interesting is they have cabled everything in racks, and it's really professionally done.
Okay.
And I was invited along there a couple of times, one time on a Sunday morning, and there was half a dozen guys all working on improving things. They have a separate training room for getting people there through their licence exam.
Okay.
A meeting room. Rather comfortable meeting room.
Yeah, I was
so
gonna say,
everybody
that's
goes to sleep.
Right on the meeting room.
That's the back of the reading room, so everyone sits around in rounds. Okay, the second topic, I wanted to just go briefly through EME propagation, because people might get the idea that you just point at the moon and the signal comes back. And the reality is there's a lot of variability. Up to 10 dB on 10 gigs, which we'll explain. 20 dB or more on 24 gigs. And they're all to do with the position of the moon, how much the moon's wobbling, how much water vapour there is in the atmosphere, what your takeoff's like. If it's low on the ground, you get more ground noise, and all of these variables which you have to optimise. So it's not just a point and it all happens. It's much worse than, say, 2 metres, except that at 2 metres to make it work, you've got to have much more power and big Yagis, and you can't cut it round in the back of your car. So, just a look at propagation losses. 2 metres, 253 dB to get a signal is lost, but to get the signal there and back. When you go up to, say, 10 gigs, it's much worse. And you think, well, why the hell would anybody try and do EME at microwaves? And the answer is, your antenna gain for the same physical size, say, dish, or same capture area of Yagis, it goes up as the square, or as the square of the frequency. So every time you go up, say 10 times in frequency, you get 20 dB more antenna gain. That 20 dB actually cancels out the propagation loss exactly. So you're still no better off, except that you've got an antenna at the other end where you pick up another 20 dB. So going from, I mean, we're effectively going up a factor of 100, or say 72. So we actually gain about 20 dB. And that's why on 10 gigs you can get away with an antenna this sort of size. On 2 metres, there are other problems which we'll go into. So that's the antenna gain size issue. System noise is generally lower. I've operated EME in Hobart, and if I beam anything below about 20 degrees, I just get so much noise from all of the things that are going on in Hobart. You might think if you're on the top of the hill that's the best place for VHF, but you also see all the noise from the whole of Hobart because it's all line of sight with you. So 2 metres is no good at all if you're trying to work on the horizon from a city, or right if you're out in the bush. When you go up in frequency, your beam width tends to focus more and more on the moon, and the moon itself is hot, admittedly only 218 degrees Kelvin, but that's hot compared to 0, and that produces microwave radiation. And an antenna that's fully, has a beam width fully covering the moon picks up about 2 dB of moon noise. And so if I'm running 50 watts and the guy at the other end's running 50 watts and he's got a big dish, it's harder for him to receive me than it is for me to receive him, because most of my antenna just sees the cold sky. My beam is 3 degrees and the moon's only half a degree, so half a degree, and we're talking areas, is almost nothing compared to what it sees. Where you run into a problem at 10 gigs, when you get very low and the ground is within your beam width. If you're trying to work, as I was on this trip, trying to do a world record, and where you just have to work at 0 degrees, then you pick up the warm ground, which is 290k, and that costs you up to 3 dB, depending on how much of that is in your beam width. 24 gigs, water vapour dominates. Water vapour absorbs signals, but it also, because it absorbs, it's like any sort of resistance that absorbs things, it generates noise. And you can have 20 dB of extra loss due to water vapour, or due to heavy cloud. If you're beaming right at the horizon and you're going right through 100 kilometres or so of water vapour. Now, lower frequencies, water vapour is not an issue. And 10 gigs to my mind is the sort of sweet spot, because you don't get into the water vapour problem and you get the maximum antenna gain. The difficulty is generating power. Lunar degradation, it varies. The moon doesn't go round in a circle around us, it's an ellipse, and that produces up to 2 dB, 2.3 dB of variation from when the moon is closest or furthest away. So if you're playing QRP or you're just getting into this stuff, you've got to choose a time when the moon's as close as possible. The other problem you have is Doppler shift. Now, Doppler shift is primarily caused by the fact that we're moving on the Earth. The moon is moving as well, but as we rotate towards, when the moon is just rising, we're racing along the surface of the Earth towards it. And when we go the other way, we're going away from it. And so on a day at 10 gigs, you'll typically have variation plus or minus 20 kilohertz. And that means if you're trying to use digital modes with a bandwidth of 2 hertz, you've got to be automatically compensating and tuning for the Doppler if you're going to get it to work. You don't have that extreme problem at 2 meters. Still get it, but I mean, instead of 20 kilohertz, it's going to be 200 over a day. But over a contact, probably a lot of people don't even notice it at 2 meters. Now, the moon itself is doing something like this every month. You might think that the moon's up there with the face almost pointing at us, but because it's an ellipse and because it's pear-shaped, its momentum means that as it goes around it wobbles. The heavier bit leads and lags. And so the moon is wobbling something like this. We're also moving on the Earth, and the combination of these two means the Doppler shift to one point or another point is slightly different. And so even though we might know exactly what the Doppler shift is right in the middle of the moon, the Doppler shift can be up to plus or minus 200 hertz across the moon. And that means the signal that comes back is spread in a sort of roughly Gaussian shape. And again, that mitigates against using very narrow bandwidths.
Does that mean we get to see more than 180 degrees of the moon?
We do. Yes, in area we see about 10% more of a half of the moon.
Okay, cool.
So looking at that picture, how long is that time delay?
It's a month. Yeah. No, I mean, you don't notice it when you look at it.
You'd be a bit worried if you did notice.
Yeah. I mean, you might all be suddenly hypnotised.
The shadow was bigger the next time you looked.
Yeah. Now, because of the movement of the moon and our movement on the Earth, there are times when the spreading of the signal is less because our movement cancels out the moon's movement. And if we can stay exactly, if we can rotate around the moon exactly at the same rate that it's moving, then we cancel out the Doppler shift. And so, for instance, the signal up here, these signals are at the same power, same situation. Can you see the 4 tones there? With a bit of imagination.
Yeah, squint your eyes.
Yeah, well, that's when the Doppler spreading is 160 Hertz wide. But if you can choose a time when the Doppler spreading is 2 Hertz, you get a nice narrow signal. And much easier to detect in a narrow bandwidth. So the trick is, if you write on the margin, you've got to find a time when the moons wobble and it cancels out the Earth's rotation for you and your partner, and the combination of both. Unfortunately, some nice people have done the arithmetic for us, and we just put a little program in that calculates when that will happen.
And how much of a window have you got?
Essentially, those very low, down to a few hertz, last for perhaps an hour, 1 day a month.
For both people.
For both, for any 2 people.
Yeah.
But you can work somebody else on a different day.
Yeah.
You meant to have your knitting on there.
This is an example between me and Charlie G3 Whiskey Delta Golf over a month, and you can see the spreading gets for just this one day gets down to a couple of hertz, and the reason that the graph looks a bit odd here is this is where it went over a 24-hour UTC period, and so that some of these dots belong to the next day, but and I wasn't clever enough to graph it. As well as that, my common window with Charlie is generally only an hour or so, and so even though I've squeezed it in, there's actually 18 hours between here when we just couldn't work, because by the time that by the time Charlie sees the moon, it's almost down here. Now, the programs to take advantage of doing EME with small systems. You can do EME with CW if you use big antennas and plenty of power. And that's the way it was done in the past, but you're certainly not going to cart those sort of things around in your car. Joe Taylor, who is a Nobel Prize winning astronomer and also a ham, K1JT. And by the way, he did hold a VK2 call sign at one stage when he was out here doing radio astronomy with CSIRO.
There you go.
For a period of time. He's written these programs which have just revolutionised EME. I've been sort of following what he's been doing and giving him feedback, and I think a fair bit of what I've done over the years has been fed into his programs.
And you've co-authored.
Yes, and co-authored a paper which he let me go the primary author. So. Yes.
That's impressive.
The basic secret to this is it uses effective bandwidths of just a few hertz, which derive from fast Fourier transforms, which are things you can do in this day and age on ordinary PCs. Essentially you'll pick up, depending on how good your CW is, anything from 12 to 18 dB over CW using these sort of modes, and depending on the other variables involved. The first mode that was used for, well actually the first mode was called JT44, which has long gone into history. JT65 was designed for EME at 2 meters. I was the first one to get that working at 10 gigs, and then Joe developed JT4, which has a wider spreading of the tones to cope with all of the spreading of the signal at 10 gigs. And then in the last 12 months, an Italian amateur developed QRA64 and worked with Joe to implement that. And that's another couple of dB more sensitive than JT4, and in addition, it doesn't produce false decodes. JT4 doesn't produce a lot of false decodes, but if you just leave it there listening to the noise, occasionally you'll see call signs. And if you're not used to using it, you think, oh, someone's calling me. If you look at the time and realise the moon wasn't even up, you get a bit of a clue that that's a false decode. Where I worry about a false decode is when you send a signal report, and if it's right on the margin, you're not sure whether it was a say minus 14 dB or minus 16 dB, and you either wait to get the QSL card and then find you didn't have a contract, whereas QRA64 just doesn't produce false decodes. I mean, it does, but in sort of testing I've done sort of once every 3 months continuous testing, so right at the margin, which signals never stay right at the margin all the time. And so I think QRA64 is going to be, well, it's certainly the mode at 10 gigs, because both Charlie and I are keen on it, and we've just led everybody else in the world to use it. But at lower frequencies, there are people still hanging on with JT4 and JT65.
Yeah, the numbers mean something, don't they, Rick?
Yeah, it's a number of tones. So there's 65 possible tones, 4 possible tones, which means you can spread them out and cope with spreading. The interesting thing about the QRA64, it's still got 64 tones, and it's coping with this spreading. And Nico has developed a technique that it's not perfect, you still get some loss with spreading, but it seems to cope with it. And he's explained it, but I cannot explain it to you. He used mathematics.
So he explained it, but you couldn't understand it.
That's right. He couldn't yes. Okay. Now, to give you a bit of an idea of the variability at 10 gigs, if the spreading with this is with QRA64, which tends to make it easier to work with spreading. If you go from 5 Hz to 160 Hz, it costs you about 6 dB, which is still important when you're working on the margin. The lunar degradation costs you 3 dB. The moon noise on a large disk will be 2 dB. So from the best to the worst case, there's about 10 dB difference. Now, 10 dB difference is enormously important because it's the difference between running 5 watts or 50 watts. And where's Richard? What's the difference in the price, Richard? Yes.
If you need to ask.
Yes. But at 10 gigs, that makes a big difference. So if you're starting out, you're probably better off to start with a low power system and pick the right time when all these things happen. Now, all these things happen not very often, but it's a big thrill when you get it right. Now, so what I'm saying here is you can use sort of with a 77 centimetre dish to a 3 metre dish. I don't any longer have my 77 centimetre dish. I'll explain about that in the next talk. But it's equivalent to running 2 watts to 20 watts, whether you get all these things right or not. And here's some options. If you've got a 60 centimetre dish to a 3 metre dish, this is a 60 centimetre dish. Under the best conditions, you only need 4 watts. The worst conditions, 40 watts. So this system with a 50 watt PA, you can work people with. Well, I can work people even with a 2.4 metre dish, even under poor conditions. And Richard's going to be able to work with his 1.8 metre dish to a 3 metre dish with half a watt.
How much do you have? How much power? 2 watts? Yeah, no, half that.
Oh,
250 milliwatts. I know whether this might be too amplifier high.
Okay, now we get on to my actual trip. And this is what OK1KR, I like working with. This is a club station in the Czech Republic, and I like working with them because they've got some really keen guys and a really good website. And so every time they punch a contact into their computer, you can immediately look at their website and see that you've got a grid square where you worked them from. And it all happens instantaneously. And before this trip, that's what their grid squares looked like in VK. Now, this was VK3XPD, and this was Charlie VK3NX. And this was David VK5KK, and all the rest of them they got by working me on various trips over the last few years. Now, I guess I'm getting old, and I had always thought I would like to. You notice that the grid squares, there's a grid field, see that OH? That's a grid field. There's 100 grid squares in each grid field. And I wanted to get this grid field because, see, it just gets onto the Australian mainland. And I thought, you know, I'm 76, I will be in January, and travelling all that way is not going to happen much more into the future. So I'd like to get that grid field. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to go all that way, there's all these grid squares here. He had 67 grid squares in VK, and I thought I could get it up to 100. So I have 100 grid squares on this map. Then I thought, well, if I'm going to go all that way, I might as well take 24 gigs, because I didn't have any of those grid fields on 24 gigs, and that's against my normal principle of not trying to do too much on any one trip. But given that this was probably the last trip I was going to do of this nature, I took 24 gigs as well. So, leaving Hobart, that's my 77, faithful 77 centimetre dish. It's a little bit bigger than this one, which I've used for most of those grid, well, all those grid squares in the past. To make sure I had contingencies, I had a backup 60 centimetre dish, and I had my 24 gig dish, which is 1.13 metres. 24 gigs, as I explained earlier, is much more difficult. This water vapour is a real problem. And so I have to use a larger dish. As well as that, it's very hard to generate any sort of power at 24 gigs. And I've got 20 watts, which is pretty significant at 24 gigs. Even so, it's really hard. But
is that a 1296 Yogi sitting there as well?
no, that's a telephone, a mobile telephone Yagi, because a lot of these places you struggle to get internet connection. It turned out that I didn't actually use it. I either had internet connection or it was so bad that nothing was going to help. But that, you know, you do need to tell people at least when you're going to be on, and otherwise they, you know, particularly a club station, they've got to get up at, you know, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, go to their club station to work you. So you've really got to have skids and make sure they're there. But there were certainly times when I didn't have internet, and when I thought I mightn't, I just a day or two in advance, when I was going through a town where there was internet, I said, I plan to be here and about this time, well, on their moonrise is the best thing, and that works pretty well. And you don't have to arrange, well, you're sort of arranging a skid, but you don't have to have the internet running. So this was the 77 centimetre dish on the, you notice that's a different tripod to that one. And in fact, that's a USB dongle up on a mast for the internet.
Notice the red dirt as well.
Red dirt gets into everything. Oh,
Nature's doorstep.
you know, and I mean, particularly if you, well, even on a highway, trucks will come off the road and squirt dust over you. So these were the new, all the black, all the ones I've got a black border around are the new grid squares I worked on 10 gigs, including these two. PG71 in the other map, which was I had done previously. And you'll notice I've marked lightning strikes. It's a sort of another name for Murphy. And the one up the top there in Darwin is Darwin. See, there's a circle there. Now, these are OK1KRs. That's off his map. So I did actually work that grid square up there. But I think you all know what happened. A member of the public reported to the Federal Police there was a suspicious activity going on, and 3 Federal Police turned up, and I'm sort of used to people you know, when you're on the side of the road, the tourists all turn up thinking, you know, they've paid for their trip around Australia, they're entitled to know everything that's going on, and they stop and ask you what you're doing, and you explain it. And they usually show some interest and say, can they take your photo and stuff. Anyway, these guys were really aggressive. They were, a member of the public had told them there was a potential terrorist activity going on. I was near the airport, probably half a kilometre away, and I guess, to be fair, they might have thought I was going to be shooting down an aeroplane with this dish pointing up at the sky.
Darwin Airport's also a military airport.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I started off with my, you know, I sort of smiled at them and thought they'd be interested in what I was doing. In the normal way that the tourists are, and I said, oh yes, what are you doing here? And I'm sending signals to the moon. Well, this sort of blank look. Then I went into my usual spiel is, have you heard of amateur radio? No. I didn't have a way of communicating that made any sense to them, because they were absolutely convinced
Using more than 2 cylinders.
I was about to shoot something down with this damn thing. Well, they then said, who do you work for? This is just a hobby. You're not telling me you can't noise equipment round here, it's just a hobby. Yes.
Yes.
People buy $70,000 motorhomes just for a hobby. What's wrong with what you're
And they asked me, do you own these computers? Like, I might have pinched them. Why have you got 2 computers? You know. Then, do you do this with some organisation? Now, I should have thought to say the WIA and given them Justin's phone number. But I was thinking EME, and I, you know, I thought that, well, I didn't think of saying that. I thought, well, there's no organisation that does this. I said, we just send emails to each other and we organise each other to do.
Sounding more like terrorist activity.
Now, while I'm getting interviewed, a lady cop is looking all through my luggage and finding books and as you know, she found an email where I talked about activating grid squares, and she comes over to me, what's this activation mean? So, next step was, okay, can we ring your wife? Oh, she's passed away. Have you got a son and daughter? Yes, I got a son. I give him the phone number, and I must have, under this sort of pressure, I gave him my own phone number rather than my son's phone number. And her mind diverted to my mobile and it rang. You lied to us! Bloody hell! So, anyway, I give them the right number. They get through to my grandson. And I only know this because I've asked my grandson since. Do you know Rex Moncur? Yes, he's my pal. Do you know why he'd be up in Darwin pointing this antenna at the aeroplanes? He'd be sending signals to the moon. Oh, a bit of cooperation with the story.
How old is your grandson?
15.
Oh.
If you look on YouTube, you'll see one of his poor attempts at documenting EME when he came out with me. So he does understand a little bit about it. Anyway, they apparently said to him, because you're 15, we can't take a statement from you. Can we talk to father? So he puts the call through to my son, who was at work, and they start the same story with him, and he said, look, I can understand that it doesn't make a lot of sense, but he does this in his retirement. He seems to enjoy it, and it's all pretty harmless. And he's got a world record, but he's pointing this at the aeroplanes. No, he wouldn't be pointing at the aeroplanes. Fortunately, I wasn't doing aircraft scans. He'd be sending signals to the moon. So, okay, the story was starting to look sensible. But they still said to me, "We want you to come back to the station and we'll take a detailed statement from you."
You were going to see what grid square their station was in.
I said, "Yeah, I'm happy." I mean, the implication was, if you don't, we're going to arrest you. Because they preface this by, "We're not going to arrest you now, but we'd like you to come back to the station." So I followed them back to the station, and I think
they waited while you packed all your gear up?
They did, but they got agitated because it took so long. And the reality is, my gear has to be packed up exactly in the same way every time. Otherwise, things will get damaged and it won't fit. But they did wait, and then I followed them back. They obviously had a conversation in their van on the way back, and they had mellowed, but they still went through about half an hour of just getting all the detail, and in the end they said, "Well, thank you for explaining grid squares to us." And then he said, "I'll get you a card," because he said, you know, I explained I'd been doing grid squares all over Australia. He said, "I just can't understand, you haven't been pulled over before."
Maybe this is the only time you've done near a military airbase.
I think, to be fair, that was the trick.
Undoubtedly, you've put together a package explaining amateur radio and all the derivations and sent it off to
So
do some homework.
this is the card he gave me. Who's his name? I mean, you can see why they were agitated, because they're giving these cards out to all the people who work at the airport to report any suspicious activity. So that was the first little lightning burst on my chart. This is Fitzroy Crossing, and that's the back window of my car. I put a towel there so you could see what was going on. I woke up at about midnight to hear the alarm had gone off on my car, but I was sound asleep, and I didn't realise that it was an alarm. I thought I must have done something that's caused my car to beep. You know, you think electronically, what fault's caused this to happen? So I started getting dressed, and it stopped, and I thought, oh, at least I'm not waking up other people now. Back to bed. Half an hour later, it starts again. And this time I thought, well, I better get dressed, find out what's happened, and took a torch, and some kids had smashed into the car. Now fortunately the alarm works pretty well, apparently the way it works, because I've never had it work before. As soon as they actually put their hand through to open the door, the alarm goes off, the lights flash, and scared them away. But I then thought, well, I'm not going to hang around here with the window open, they might be back again. So I went off. I remembered there was a police station, so I put the police station in the GPS and went off to a police station. On the way to the police station, I ran into a whole group of little Aboriginal kids who started a bonfire in the middle of the road with car tyres. And I thought, whoops, we've got to turn quickly here. And without making the story too long, the police said, look, there's nothing we can really do. The kids are just bored. The lesson is, don't stay in Fitzroy Crossing.
Right.
Fill up with fuel and keep going.
Yeah. Now this is the next lightning strike, and I was actually working a grid square right next to the OH grid field that I wanted, and I organised to be just sort of 20 metres one side, and then when I worked that I was going to go to the other side. So here I was almost ready to complete the whole purpose of the trip, or the original purpose of the trip. And out of the corner of my eye I see the tripod with a dish going down. And what had happened is, see these clipped things? They had a flat spot on them so that when you clip them down, they lock. But mine, after doing all these grid squares, must have got rounded and it gradually slipped. It wasn't windy. I can only think some sort of temperature, very hot, some sort of temperature change. And as soon as it got out of balance, it must have twisted, snapped the aluminium casting. I thought at the time I'd escaped with only a problem with the tripod, and I thought, well, if I can get the same tripod, this is already, that head's already drilled for that plate. All I need to do is replace all the legs, and this is standard Bunnings, or it's a Bosch tripod that you get from Bunnings. Now I was 160 kilometres north of Port Hedland, but I thought, well, I'll just go down to Port Hedland to Bunnings and get one. There's no Bunnings in Port Hedland when I got there. I mean, it's a great big iron ore terminal, you'd think there'd be everything there. But they did have a Blackwoods, and so Blackwoods said, well, yes, we can get you a tripod, but we don't have it here, that type. Have you got any other tripods? And they had a Stanley tripod. So that's this one. I think it's a better tripod actually.
Cool.
But of course I then had to remount the plate, and I didn't have an electric drill. So I had to buy an electric drill from Blackwoods, and Blackwoods is up market, so they want $120 for an electric drill. No. So I repaired that, came back and measured my sun noise, and it was way down. And I thought, I looked at the feed, yeah, the feed was bent. And I started trying to put little spaces in to compensate for the bent feed, but I wasn't doing any good. And one of the great things about EME is you've sort of got a specialist help desk on the internet from all these people who've done all these things before. And I explaining, and they said, do a string test. Anyone know what a string test is? Well, I think the string test is next one. No. Okay, you can see the feed is bent. Not a lot, but it is bent, but I didn't notice that initially. Fortunately, the little place I was staying at, it's a little roadhouse, which on Google Earth says the most expensive fuel in Australia. And because they have to generate their own power, and they had a little workshop with a vice, so I straightened the feed as best I could, but I still couldn't get the sun noise back. And I did the string test, and basically what the string test is, you put a string round there, you pull it tight, and then another string round there, and you pull it tight, and if the two strings don't touch each other, that means the dish has been distorted. And I had 10 millimetres difference between the two. Well, 10 millimetres at 10 gigs is starting to make life. Now, about this time I thought, I'm not going to get this dish back into shape. perhaps when I get to Perth I might get some help, but even when I got to Perth, people said the only way to fix this is you've got to make it die and spin it again, and you've got to remove everything, and we've got to start from scratch, and it'll be cheaper and we'll make you another one. So about this time, my backup was, I thought I had my, by this time I'd agreed with an American guy that we were going to have a go at the world record, and I had to tell him that the world record was looking pretty thin because the dish was now not going to work. But I thought, if I'm really going to make a serious go at this world record, I can't do it with my backup little dish, because he had to go portable as well. But I did have my 1.13 metre dish on the roof for 24 gigs, but I didn't have a feed for it. But I remember that a lot of guys around this room have got a feed for 1.2 metre dishes. So I rang up Larry and I said, you know, you've got a feed in your dish, and Larry went to some trouble to figure out whether we could do anything, and then it occurred to me his feed wouldn't be tuned up anyway, and there was a tuned up feed at my place for the dish. So all I had to do was get Larry into my house. So I rang up my son, who's got a key. He didn't answer straight away. After about a day, he said, "Hi Dad, you after me? I'm in Texas." He was only about 30 kilometres away from W5LUA, who I'd been working. Fortunately, he didn't take the key with him, so he gave the key to his wife, who passed it to Larry. Larry went to a lot of trouble to send me the feed, put a wooden plate on it so it wouldn't get bent, and it arrived all beautifully, very quickly, and thank you. But this meant I was in a different situation. I could either use 24 gigs or 10 gigs, but not both. In fact, I had to re-drill the larger dish, sort of 45 degrees offset to, because the holes weren't in the same place on the 10 gig system, and put another one of these holes through it for the rifle scope. So, no. So this was the backup system, which is here, and this worked really well on the big guns. And by big guns, I mean anyone who had anything more than a 2.4 metre dish, up to HV9Q's 10 metre dish. But I couldn't work the sort of 1.8 metre and 1.2 metre stations on this. That's the 24 gig dish, which I ultimately changed over. But as my main interest was in putting little grid squares on OK1KR's map, and as he's got a 4.8 metre dish, this is good enough to work in. So here's a few of the stations I was working. Here's G3 Whiskey Delta Golf, a 3 metre dish and 75 watts. There's OK1KIR. This is HV9Q's 10 metre dish.
What does he steer that with?
Probably not manually like I do.
Maybe a gun turret or something. Or a professional.
It was a satellite ground station.
Okay.
It went.
It's professional.
It was a 1960s something. Well, here's OK1. I mean, it's amazing. There's 3 active AME stations in the Czech Republic. You wouldn't dream of why.
Are they all in the same sort of place in the Czech Republic, or are they spread
No,
out?
they're scattered around.
Okay.
I mean, this is a very good station. This is OZ1 LPR. Now he's got an offset dish, and the trouble with an offset dish is when they're designed to look at something up in the sky, and when you bring them back to the horizon, this all gets in the way of what's mounting it, and so you can't work him unless the elevation is more than 16 degrees. And I'm working other stations. You know, each time I'd come up, the moon would rise first in Czech Republic, then Switzerland, and then UK, and then finally I have to hang around for about half an hour before Denmark comes up because they couldn't get right down to the horizon.
Rex, on your average grid square, how many stations did you activate?
On an average, probably only 3 or 4, but
Only 3 or 4.
yeah,
Right.
but
what was your most?
best was about 8. Yeah.
Is it 650 watts,
Yeah,
or is that a
something like
misprint?
That is correct, but he tells me he only gets about 300 watts at the feed.
Only.
So TWT then.
Yes, and a big TWT, which means he's got to have a whole lot of flexible waveguide because he can't mount the TWT out here.
Right.
Okay.
But he's by far the strongest signal. But he's still got to hear me. Now this is the smallest station I worked. He only had 10 watts and a 1.8. Now, but that's when I actually had changed over to the 1.13 metre dish that Larry sent me to feed for. Now this was OK2AQ. I was able to work him off the 77 centimetre dish. I don't think I worked him on this, no. But on the 77, a 1.2 metre dish and 40 watts I could work. A struggle. Now, how do we click?
That's almost true.
This is the Stanford University Club. This should be a little video, however. It doesn't look like it's going to work, but this is a portable station. This folds down and that rotates.
What, it goes on a truck or something?
Yes.
Okay.
What diameter is that?
I think about a 4.5 metre dish.
Yeah. Travel there's 2.4.
Okay, 24 gigs. I had worked all these grid fields, but I hadn't worked any of these. It is fairly difficult to try and run 2 stations because you only got a certain amount of time on a moon pass and so forth. So I had to dedicate a separate day for 24 gigs, and I just reserved them for they're just picking up the grid fields, because not only you need good conditions, no rain at either end, and so I didn't go. So that's what the 24 gig system looked like before it got modified for 10 gigs.
More red dirt.
And these are the grids that I picked up, which gave me those 3 grid fields. And they're all my, well, no, I think that's 3NX. No, that might be XPD. So other than those, they're all mine, but 24 gigs is really hard. Okay, well, during that trip, I've been working a station WA3LBI, and gradually, as I moved further west, we just didn't have any common window. He was in New Jersey or somewhere like that. And then he said he was going to take his station portable to Delaware, because Delaware is a state that's fairly rare, and the Americans like to work all states. That's something they get a certificate for. And to get all states on 10 gigs was probably an achievement. So he said he was going to Delaware, and I thought, well, if he can have a good takeoff at Delaware, and I got out Google Earth, there was the potential, if I can have a good takeoff, that we could break the world record. Now, effectively, the world record at the time was about 18,300 kilometres, which, I mean, halfway around the world's 20,000, so you're almost on the opposite sides of the world to each other. That means if you're both going to see the moon, you've got to have a takeoff that's absolutely down to zero. And you're not going to have much time either. So the problem was, I had to be as far as possible on the west coast of Western Australia, and he had to be as far as possible on the east coast of the USA. And we both had to have good takeoffs, and we're both beaming over land. So, the solution is to find a place where you can beam over water, because then you know you've got a zero horizon. And so, you know, we're almost opposite each other. Now it turns out, if you go to this little part of Western Australia, you can beam over the water.
And the rest of it inland, that's very flat.
Well, it's actually, the trick is, there's an escarpment there that goes up about 300 or 400 metres.
Is it that high?
Yeah. But from the sea level, I couldn't see the escarpment. But I found a really good location up about 80 metres, and then I could see the escarpment. But clearly, I was getting very close to zero elevation. And despite the fact that he's on the east coast of America, he went to this little place here that probably hard to see, but this is all water here. This is a little inlet. So he had except that he was only, his elevation was about 2 metres at the most. This place was it's like an RSL for the Americans. What do they call it?
You did a VFW.
That's right. And the people who apparently frequent this particular VFW are mainly widows, and they were running a dance, and they thought these hams had come along to the dance.
Thought they like a change, yeah.
and these ladies were all in their 60s and 80s, I guess, World War II veterans or something, and they got really good support. They gave them power, and all they had to do was go for dance. So we both had, their takeoff wasn't perfect, but it was good. Let's see.
Rex, could you just go back one slide, the one that you had before?
Well, I'll probably do that by mistake
Oh,
anyway. Okay, so that was my takeoff. It's essentially right over the water. It doesn't show up, but you can actually see the escarpment. But I'd be surprised if it was more than about 0.1 of a degree, so about as good as you're going to get. And that was his takeoff. You can see trees and stuff, and this is the VFW sort of patriotic stuff.
Is that the mood up there?
That's the moon, yes. Now, I mean, this guy on a trailer has, well, this is something, Richard. 2.4 metre dish.
Just discussing that. It's the wrong colour, but anyway.
And in theory 125 watts, TWT. I don't think they're getting anything like that out of it, but because the signal reports wouldn't have been about 1 dB difference, but there might be some losses. So that's my system now with the
You
one
collar
point-
ropes on there, I notice.
Oh yeah, we're not going to fall down now. I learned my lessons. I think it would have fallen down even with the ropes,
Yeah.
but and that's what their trailer. Now I assume that this sort of tilts flat when they're travelling.
2.4 just why it's flatness.
But this is a serious portable operation.
Just a little.
That's the inside of their van.
Okay.
There's a shelf, really.
Mine is a little more modest. Now, here's the exchange for the world record, and you can see this number over the side here effectively tells you that you had to know my call sign for that to decode, essentially. But if that's a 0, it means it didn't know anything in advance. So most of the time, I mean, particularly text messages, there's nothing anybody could know in advance. But most of the time, that was a 0. So it was a good
contact.
a good contact. And he sent me a photograph rather than a screen grab of what
So
he...
from his technology, he couldn't work out how to do a screen grab.
So- Now, I did a degradation test. One of the features of WSJT is you can, when you've recorded files, you can add noise to them to see what the effect of, if the signal had been 1 dB weaker, well, you add 1 dB of noise, and if it still decodes, you know you had 1 dB to spare. You can add 3 dB of noise, and you can see here that with no degradation, I copied everything. By the time I put 3 dB of degradation, I lost. See there were 3. The first decode and the next 2. I lost, which meant I didn't. But I still could have completed a QSO with all the rest of this information. So I had at least 3 dB to spare. But the problem is, at the start, the moon was rising for me, so my antenna is seeing ground noise. And that's why it drops out at the start.
Rex, I'm assuming you need zeros in that right-hand column to count as the world record.
No.
No?
No. I mean, do you not count something because you when you hear your own call sign?
No, did a signal exchange.
Well, no. I was just thinking if you needed to know, you needed to know your call sign for it to work.
Yeah.
Right. No. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
I mean, there's always an argument about this.
Okay. No, I was just wondering.
I mean, no, I was first going into a little bit. I mean, people say that taking advantage of any information, such as the call signs, knowledge of the call signs, is cheating. That's one argument. The other argument is you can't tell whether you hear your own call sign or not when it's a real weak signal, because your brain
If you listen to the noise long enough, you'll hear it.
your brain only needs to get about 2 dits and dars in the right place and you recognise your own call sign. The reality is if you change one letter, they still get their own call sign. I mean, and if you look at the definition of a QSO, which goes back to 1957 in QST, it's very explicit that you must identify those call signs, but exchange some unknown information. So all you've got to do is be sure of both call signs, identify them, even though you know them, you identify them. But the unknown information, like the signal report, you must exchange. So while there's an argument, I'm happy. and
Well, you got zeros.
yes, well, we got them. I mean, I had a second QSO. He probably would have been losing me as the moon went down at this end. But we had a second QSO. You'll notice there's actually a gap here between 33 and 45. What happened there was W5LUA said, I'd like a QSO too. And I mean, we could have waited because he's in Texas a long way this way. But this guy said, oh yeah, you go ahead. I mean, there's a lot of hams are just interested in the contact, whereas I was interested in understanding the science. But so I did another contact in between, and then we had a second contact before we both lost the moon. And in terms of the predictions, this worked out within about a minute of the correct time for both ends of the QSO. Okay, well that's all I was going to talk about today, but I had another contact today which I was pleased about. Has anyone ever worked 3DA0MB?
South Africa, was it? Since Southern Africa.
Yeah, Swaziland.
That's it.
On 10 gigs.
Wow.
Okay, that covers the talk, and I'm very happy to answer questions.
Well, that Rex, that was really impressive.
Last one.
And I'm still alive.
So what's your next challenge?
Well, the Americans I just completed with, they want to try and extend it. And I said, well, I can't go any further west than where I was. And they're exploring going to Bermuda.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How many more kilometres is that?
It's actually too far. And the only way to handle it is for me to come a bit closer.
Ah, right. Well, you're going to get your water taken.
I won't get a water takeoff, and it's really hard to find a decent takeoff. I need to come about 250 kilometres closer in Western Australia.
You'll be up on top of the escarpment.
I'll be on top of it, but everything's flat. And I have found a spot which is not too bad. But it's not easy, and one of the problems is the programs like Moonscared and VK3UM's Planner don't work very well when you're right at the limit. So it's hard to predict what's really happening, but WSJT is really good. It uses a NASA model of the moon, or the moon's orbit, that Joe was able to get hold of. But it's not a planner. It just tells you what it is in real time. So what you can do with WSJT is advance your clock all the time and have a look. But it's very hard to explore, say, a whole period of 12 months.
Yeah.
What's happening with 3UM's program?
Well, I noticed the last few days people have been reporting that it's no longer on his website, or his website's closed. I understood that Peter Young, was trying to do some deal where the WAA was going to license it to somebody, and I think he's going over the top, because all we want somebody is to pick it up and run with it.
And to maintain it.
And maintain it. I don't think it's possible to maintain it, because I've done a lot of work with Doug, and the documentation is
Minimal.
minimal.
Okay. Fine. Okay. Any questions? More questions for Rex?
And if anyone wants to see what was the backup EME station, this is it. But I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll have 1, 2, 3.
Oh, we had a milestone on the weekend.
And if anybody is really serious about it, I'm happy to lend us a 30-watt station with 60 centimetres to anyone. But it's and 30 watts is enough to work under good conditions, the big guns. So, and it's all ready to go. You just got to sort out things like Doppler correction.
Congratulations, Rex, and can we show our appreciation, please?